I believe that we as humans, we're an onion and we've got a lot of layers. There's a lot of layers to uncover. And I do believe that there is a time and a place where different modalities of healing and different types of coaching and therapy work for us because, we are complex. There are so many layers to us. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Power in the Pause podcast. How are you doing today? As a reminder, please do not forget to hit subscribe so you do not miss a single episode because I release one every week. And if you would do me a huge favor and please leave a 5-star rating and a review so that more people will find this podcast. So without further ado, let's dive into today's episode where I am joined by my friend, Leah Morris. Hello, Leah. How are you?
Wendy, it's so good to be back. I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, you're so welcome, you guys. We have been chit-chatting for like 25 minutes before we even hit the record button. So you are in for a treat in today's episode because we are going to dive headfirst into how it is that you can unleash your potential by reframing your beliefs for personal growth. So before we dive into our juicy topic today, I want to share a little bit about Leah with you all. So Leah is an established life and relationship transition coach and the visionary behind Life Remade, a holistic personal coaching service. Leah's professional journey, fueled by her own transformative experiences, spans over 6 years of dedicated support for individuals navigating relationship transitions, career changes, and spiritual awakenings, among other life-altering events. Her unique somatic integrative approach, coupled with her certification in hypnotherapy, really sets her apart in this field. And it makes me super duper excited to have her here today to chat about some topics that I've never dived into in this podcast yet, which makes this even more exciting for each and every one of you guys. So, Leah, let's dive into our topic today. And my first question for you is, it relates back obviously to the topic of the podcast, which is all about the power in the pause. So in your experience, how is it that you see the concept of pausing influencing people's journeys of being able to reframe their beliefs and overcome those inner obstacles?
Yeah, I think that our beliefs are something that work in the background. And a lot of times we're not really even necessarily aware that they're there. And so we're operating in this like default method all the time. We tend to repeat patterns over and over. We find ourselves in the same cycles. We wonder why it's really difficult to change. And that's because our beliefs are sort of like fueling our actions unconsciously. And what it takes to break free from that cycle and maybe even identify some of those patterns is taking a pause. So I love that, this is what your whole podcast is about now, because when it comes to this topic, it's essential to be able to sort of stop, assess, look back, look forward, look inward and outward, and really see, what is it that's actually driving me right now, which are your beliefs. And if where I'm going isn't where I want to be going, how do I start from the root, which is those belief systems, and start to reframe them in ways that are actually going to rejuvenate me and catalyze my growth in a direction I really want.
Yeah. And I wrote this down because I wanted to come back to it, but, I want to kind of dive into the world of the unconscious, right? Which I feel like we don't allow ourselves permission to dive into, very often. And we, as a society, I feel like we find ourselves on autopilot all the time, and we're operating just trying to check one thing off the list and just, moving forward in life on autopilot. But really, how does the unconscious, or what is the untapped power of the unconscious? And what are some ways that people can really embody this pause to tap further into that part of themselves?
Yeah. Well, so you may call it unconscious or subconscious.
Right.
I think that when we all have that, and I think that the more that you learn about yourself, the more conscious you can become of the things that are unconscious or subconscious. But my belief is that we will never fully know the full potential of what's lying underneath. And so it's just a practice of making those unconscious things conscious. And a way that we can, this is a great question, because the way that we can dive into this on a more daily basis or more on a practical level is by actually tapping in to that subconscious through meditation, through breath work, through stillness. We're constantly inundated with information all the time. We're listening to podcasts, we're watching audio or watching, movies, listening to audiobooks, reading books. When we take the time to really be in silence with ourselves, we can start to hear the messages that are trying to come through all the time. And there's so much information there. There's so much information. We can hear, our feelings speaking to us. We can hear a greater power speaking to us. We can hear our emotions more loudly and clearly, which I think is, a main reason why a lot of people get stuck is that we're not actually attuned to those inner messages enough to actually get ourselves, on a better path, or get ourselves out of danger, or to get ourselves out of different relationships or into a career that feels more in alignment for us. And so the daily practice of really quieting ourselves to listen within is where I would have people start in terms of, tapping into that resource that we all have available to us.
Yeah. And I'd love for you to take that a step further and either give, a client example or a personal experience where, in those moments where you've taken that deliberate pause, where you have taken that deliberate break, that it has really allowed you to reevaluate, what your mind is thinking, what your beliefs are, and it's sort of, pivoted your ability to shift in, your personal growth.
Mm-hmm. I'll share a bit of a wild story with you. And granted, this story probably doesn't happen to everybody, but I think maybe for your listeners, if you can kind of apply this how you will in your own life in whatever way that lands. So about 7 years ago, when I was married to my previous husband, we were kind of at a breaking point in our relationship, but I was still making a lot of excuses for it. I was still just really fearful about what it would look like if I did make a big change. And what happened was we were on a river rafting trip, and this was through the Grand Canyon. And it was a brutal trip. It was really beautiful and amazing, but there was no really contact with the outside world except for our small group that we had down there. It was hot. It was strenuous work. And there happened to be a day where I actually got stung by a scorpion. Ooh. And yes. And the pain from that, it stung my ankle. The pain from that really, when you have something in your eye or when you have a cut on your hand, the only thing you think about is that hurt, that pain.
Sure.
So it really brings things into perspective and really forces you inward. And apparently I needed that much of a, sort of push in that direction to really look inward. I feel like that scorpion was sent especially for me to actually do that deeper work and look within. And I remember laying there that night in so much pain, sort of shaking from the pain. My face was, full of tears and snot, and it was not a pretty moment. Mm. And I heard so clearly my subconscious speak to me. And it said, "Why are you still choosing this?" Mm. And I remember thinking to myself, yeah, why am I still choosing this? And it put me in a place of empowered decision-making from there on out. Instead of thinking that life was happening to me, my relationship was happening to me, that I was just kind of a victim of whatever life was throwing at me, it put me in sort of that co-creator space. Right. And I do not think that maybe I would have found that question a lot sooner, or not a lot sooner, later on, but I feel like I found it a lot sooner as a result of really being still and silent and going deep within. And sometimes this can happen when we've had like a traumatic experience, like the loss of a loved one, or, a personal injury, or sometimes it happens when we're just still in nature and we're able to really quiet, the outside distractions. But for me, that was a big moment that I realized wherever that question came from, it was available to me at any given moment. And I didn't have to wait for there to be something as blaring as a scorpion sting for me to actually tap into it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're okay, first of all. And, sometimes, and you and I were both in a prior life and, in the divorce space, but, sometimes the universe does smack us upside the head to wake us up and to show us these signs. And, and I can even taking myself back into moments in time where, you do have these moments, sort of like, you may call them a come to Jesus moment. It may be something where you're just like, staring, an alternate life, square in the face. But, if somebody's thinking about this right now, right, they're wondering if the beliefs that they're having are holding them back, right? So how do you distinguish between like a limiting belief and an empowering belief, like what you were able clearly to distinguish between the two? So how can somebody distinguish between a limiting belief and an empowering belief? Like what are indicators or signs that can help somebody listening know the difference between the two?
Yeah, I think I like to make a distinction too between like beliefs and narratives. I think that narratives are kind of what happen when our beliefs start to formulate the story that we tell ourselves about our role in life, what we have to do, what we should be doing. So when you hear words that are more definitive, like should or have to or always or never, those are limiting. And sometimes there can be, positive beliefs in there that contain those words as well, like I never give up. But I think the feeling behind a limiting belief versus a non-limiting belief is that one feels constrictive and one feels expansive. So even if there isn't an answer to the question that comes up, the fact that it is causing some kind of curiosity and expansion within you to explore more deeply what the answer could be indicates that it's not a limiting belief. When you have something that feels like sort of a framework or, that's just how it always is for me, or that's how we do it in our family. Those may, have been true to some extent in your past experiences. The reason why we have limiting beliefs is because we've either experienced them before or, through our family dynamics that they've been passed down to us. So exercise that I like to do with my clients actually to kind of identify where limiting beliefs might lie is pick a certain area of your life, like career, relationships, maybe it's even health, and ask yourself, what beliefs around this area did my father have? What beliefs around this area did my mother have? Or whatever, your caretakers carried in terms of their beliefs around a certain area of your life. And then look at those beliefs and ask yourself, do any of the beliefs that they had still ring true for me? And then you can start to pattern down, what it is that you're carrying forward that maybe you didn't even decide on in the first place. And then decide which ones do I want to carry forward with me, or which ones do I want to get rid of completely or recreate for myself. And that's when you can really be more deliberate about where you go from there. And so that's a practice that I do even in my own life whenever I feel stuck in any given area, even when it comes to like money, for instance. There are so many underlying beliefs and narratives that we have around what we can and can't do with our lives. And so to be able to trace back generationally where it is those beliefs started, we can rewrite the story of our lives in a completely different way.
Yeah. And there's so much power in that, right? And I think that so many times we hold on to these deep-seated beliefs because we think that they're keeping us safe, but yet we know that they're not serving us anymore. So what would you say to somebody, for example, who recognizes that they need to start shifting those deep-seated beliefs, but struggles with the discomfort that comes with that process?
Oh my gosh. I get uncomfortable with that process.
We all do.
Right.
It's not a
Yeah.
secret.
I would say, like, well, first of all, that's totally normal. And I think it's probably a really good sign that you've reached an edge of yourself. I think discomfort and resistance to something is just such a beautiful signal that you've walked up to, yeah, an edge of your growth that you've never been to before. And I always say to the path of, or that feeling of most resistance is also an indicator of you being just on the other side of breaking through that edge. And so the resistance is there to stop you. It's a signal that this is just uncharted territory. Keep going. I think that one of the best things that you can do in that space is try and create a sense of vision for what is on the other side of that edge. So when you reach a limiting belief edge and you need to envision something new, that's when you can kind of bring up what core values you might have, what are the new beliefs that you want to create for your future going forward. How do you want to be feeling? And it can make that step past that edge a little less daunting because suddenly you're not going into this like blank void and like anything could happen. You know, it gives you a sense of, again, like that personal power over being the creator of your life. If you're the one choosing, you know, what do you choose to see going forward? What does that look like for you? What are the possibilities there instead of it being, you know, just this uncharted territory? Because I think that's what keeps us stuck. That's what the fear is the uncertainty. And we will often choose misery over uncertainty most days. And so it's really going to test, you know, your ability to lean into an unknown rather than going back to what it is that you've always done before, even if it makes you miserable.
Right. And what I'm also hearing you say is it's almost like, you know, we're daring everybody, right? I'm daring our listeners right now to really embrace what I'm hearing you say is the vulnerability in the discomfort, right? And an openness to change, right? So, you know, I agree with you. I mean, every moment where I have felt discomfort, right? It's like a combination of like discomfort and excitement. Like that's how I know on the other side of this is going to be something really amazing and so much growth. But how can somebody listening who maybe hasn't experienced this before, like how can they navigate that discomfort? You know, what are some steps that you would invite them to take to kind of walk through getting to the other side and seeing and believing and trusting really that there is something amazing waiting for them on the other side?
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing you say is like when someone feels like almost blocked from being able to embrace that vulnerability. And I mean, something that I love to do with my clients when I do see them really stuck and really blocked, you can't talk your way through a block when it's really, really present. Sometimes just talking through it isn't necessarily helpful. So what I will actually have us do is look back at wherever it was that belief first started. So that root memory, that root experience where suddenly they were met with like, maybe the reality is that I could never find a good relationship, or maybe the reality is that I don't deserve to have a great career that I'm excited about every day. So I work them through a hypnotherapy process where they feel relaxed and safe. And you can do this actually at home. Actually, many hypnotherapists will say all hypnosis is self-hypnosis because you really are guiding yourself through the imagination process.
Right.
And so we'll do that together, going into that past memory of where did I even get this to begin with? And then reimagining the best possible outcome in a way that is actually tapping into like, what would your highest self tell you in this moment? If we were to replace what happened in that moment with what this, what a heightened sense of integrity and heightened sense of truth, heightened sense of the wisdom that you carry within you, if that were to replace that past memory, how would that change your belief system? And sometimes it's as simple as that, as saying, there's another option here. You may not be able to change the past, but you could change your perception of it. You could change your story that you tell about it to yourself. And I think that's when the blocks really start to break down and start to compost into fuel for a better future, when they're not necessarily blocking people anymore, but just kind of becoming that rich soil that we're getting our life experiences off of.
I would love to go a little bit deeper into what you do as a hypnotherapist. I think it's really fascinating how, hypnotherapy in and of itself, I think it really enables people to safely go deeper into limiting beliefs that are holding them back in their life. And so I'm curious to know, like, how do you integrate this with, because you have other modalities that you use clearly, as a practitioner, but I'm curious to know, like, how does hypnotherapy complement or perhaps even enhance the effectiveness in helping people to shift their limiting beliefs so that they are moving into a state of feeling growth?
Yeah, I can talk about this all day. I mean, I did coaching in and of itself for a long time, and I added hypnotherapy because I saw how much it impacted my own life when I was working with different coaches or different, practitioners. There is so much untapped wisdom within us. And I think that it's not always as simple as just, here's some tools, here's some techniques, here's a vision, here's a plan. I think when we're talking about real lasting change, we have to look at the person from all different areas, from all different, angles. And the quickest way to tap into this in terms of how I feel has been most helpful for me, and a lot of my clients report the same thing, is when they can be in a relaxed enough paused state to be able to tap into that and envision, something better for their lives, something that they've never even seen before. Many people will call hypnotherapy imagination therapy, because that's really what it is. It's freeing yourself to imagine a different perspective, or freeing yourself to imagine or look at the things that maybe your logical brain or your rational brain hasn't allowed you to explore before.
Mm-hmm. That's really powerful. I think hypnotherapy is fascinating. And part of what I'm getting at here too is that, and I hope that my listeners are also hearing this, is that, and it's kind of what I'm also hearing you say too, and I think you believe this too, but like, it's not just like a one-stop shop where you go and you take care of this and everything is cured and everything is fine, right? Like, I believe that we as humans, we're an onion, and we've got a lot of layers. There's a lot of layers to uncover. And I do believe that there's a time and a place where different modalities of healing and different types of coaching and therapy work for us, because, we are complex. There are so many layers to us, and so many different stories that we have either had passed down or that we've, taken on or we've written for ourselves. But what I know to be true in anything, I do theta healing. It's a different form of meditation that I go into when I do, healing type of work with my clients. But what I know to be possible is that when we do align our, subconscious mind with positive beliefs, that, especially if you bring in something like hypnotherapy, I bring in theta, it facilitates that lasting change, right? So can you talk about some results that you have seen with your clients when they have had, a session with you, let's say, and sort of what has the outcome been on the other side of being able to shift that through that modality?
Yeah, I would love to learn more about theta too. I have not learned about that, but I'll give you one example. And of course, I won't use their name or anything, but a lot of people I work with really struggle with people pleasing. And that tends to hold them back from feeling any sense of true fulfillment and connection to their own lives, because they're trying to make everyone else happy. And so their life kind of looks more like a mismatch of everyone else's wants and needs and not necessarily their own. And so I did work with someone once who, and a few people actually, who this person specifically was the oldest child in the family, was someone who had a couple of emotionally immature parents. And so she kind of stepped into caretaker and mediator and was sort of that rock in her family growing up. And as she approached retirement, she was like having a real problem leaving and retiring, even though it was the obvious next step. She felt like she owed it to her job to stay and still take care. And so huge block there. She just couldn't really come to terms with like, this isn't yours. It's not your responsibility to be working and to, take care of all these people's feelings. And so after a few sessions, we decided to do a hypnotherapy session to really get into that initial memory. And we went back into, I think she was about 6 years old when it started. She had imagined herself, sitting in the living room with her family. There was a fight going on. And instead of putting herself in the middle of that fight as a 6-year-old, she imagined a different outcome. She imagined an outcome where her parents were able to apologize to her for putting her in that position. They thanked her. They told her it's not your responsibility. This is just our wounding that is kind of spilling onto you. And so many new, awarenesses dropped in for her that came straight from her imagination that she was able to really tap into. And the moment she came out of that session, she was sitting taller. She was talking a lot less. She was not trying to fill the space as much. And she was just so present because she did some inner child work in that session that helped her to show up as that, retirement age woman that does not need to prove herself to anyone by sacrificing her own well-being anymore. Right. And so that was such a powerful session that I could even relate to as it was happening for myself. That, very inspiring.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing ultimately is it helped to almost build some resiliency in her. How else do you see the power of reframing beliefs? And how they contribute to building resiliency for present day life, right? As people are navigating the fun challenges and tribulations that we experience as humans.
Mm-hmm. I think whenever you have a goal set out for yourself, what's a beautiful thing that happens is that's when all of our fears and resistance and limiting beliefs come up. Yeah. And if it was as simple as just setting a goal and that meant you got it done, then everybody would just be living their best lives. And so the work really is in not only having that clear goal for yourself, but tending to all the inner obstacles that could potentially get in the way. I recently wrote my book, The Integrity Sessions, and I remember writing down in a vision years and years ago, one day I'm going to write this book and it's going to be about this and that. And there's a reason why it took me 7 years to write, is because there were so many fun little fears and limiting beliefs along the way that kept me from actually following through on it.
Yeah.
And so I think a really beautiful thing that we can do when we do set goals for ourselves is ask, could there potentially be any limiting beliefs inside of me that would prevent me from actually achieving that goal? And with so much compassion, tending to each one. And that's when you can actually get the book written and then some, because all of a sudden you're not just getting the task done, you're actually healing the parts of you that could hold you back from all the other beautiful things that you want to create with your life.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned your book, because my number one value is integrity. Has been for 3 years. I reevaluate them every 6 months. I do that with my clients too, but integrity is always, like, it shows up as number one for the last 3 years. It used to be honesty and now it's integrity. And what caught me in a good way about your book, Leah's book is titled The Integrity Sessions, and how that relates to our theme today too, is that what I have noticed is that when I am out of integrity, I'm operating from my limiting beliefs, versus when I am in integrity, right? When I am embodying my value of integrity, that I know that I can overcome anything, and that I am living my best life, and that I am operating from, the best version of myself, or call it my truth. What can you leave our listeners with today that is one takeaway from your book that can help them to navigate through these limiting beliefs, to be in integrity with who it is that they are, and really embrace what your inner truth, or what I say that's from my heart space, right? What your heart is actually inviting you to move forward with, or a belief to shift into.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. I love that yours is integrity as well. Mine is too. And it also started out as, I called it authenticity for a couple years, and then
Interesting.
Integrity. So
interesting.
Nice that we kind of have found that word together.
I love that.
Yeah. I think that, when it comes to integrity, and that's really kind of to touch back really quickly on that story I told about the woman, reimagining it from a space of everybody being in integrity.
Right.
So what would this look like if, in that moment, your parents were in integrity and you were able to hear from, their heart space to yours, the truth of what was really happening in that memory. And I think that if we can listen to any pain that we're experiencing, if we can listen to any frustration, any resistance that we're having, any even boredom, those are all signals from that inner part of us that knows that there's something more, and there's something more aligned for us. And so not ever shying away from those moments where we're feeling any kind of, I don't even like calling them negative emotions, because I don't think they're negative. I think they're all there to teach us and show us.
Yep.
And so to not numb those in any way, and to just lean in and say, what is this here to show me? What is the message that I need to learn in this moment? And asking ourselves those better questions and being really brutally honest about the answers. I think one of my favorite questions to ask people is, what are you pretending not to know right now? And that kind of hits you in the gut sometimes of like, oh gosh,
she caught me.
No. And that kind of, there's always really convenient ways that we lie to ourselves about things. And sometimes the lies are small and sometimes they're really big and blaring. And there's a reason why, we're all really afraid of what change might hold for us sometimes. And so
Right.
to just be really compassionate towards the self, but also brutally honest. I think that's the best thing that I could leave people with. And then the answers that you find, decide what you're going to do about that awareness. So becoming aware of it is the first piece. The awareness just creates choices.
Right.
And so it's really deciding now with this new awareness of what is truest for me and what is in my deepest integrity, how will I begin to integrate that truth? And that's when integrity becomes a way of life.
That's like a mic drop. Honestly, it is. I mean, I don't even know how to end this podcast any other way, because I was thinking of something and I'm like, nope, we're going to end it there, because that in and of itself is really powerful. Leah, thank you so much for being here. I want to make sure that everybody hears again the name of your book, where they can buy it, where they can find you. And then I know that you also have a free gift for all of our listeners today.
I do. Yeah. Thank you so much. And my book is called The Integrity Sessions. I have it here. Discover your true self and transform your life. And you can find it on Amazon or also on my website. And my free gift is really exciting too. It kind of goes along with what we were just talking about. It's a PDF with 30 plus questions or journal prompts that help you to find the answers within yourself. And you might find on there, one of them is, what are you pretending not to know? So from there, you can more clearly discover, what it is that's kind of needing to come up for you.
Yeah. And where can people find you if they want to follow you across social media, if they want to come visit your website, what's your handle?
Yeah, my handle is Leah E. Morris, Leahe Morris. And my website is liferemade.com. I'm also on TikTok, diving into that world, and YouTube as well. And that is Life Remade Coaching on YouTube.
Amazing. Leah, I adore you. I'm so grateful to know you. We go back a couple of years, and I am so grateful that you are doing the work that you are doing today. I love the work that you do today. I cannot thank you enough for sharing your wisdom with our audience. Thank you for being my guest and for being on today's episode.
Thanks, Wendy. You're the best. And I love that we reconnected these years later too, and have just continued to pivot in life in our own ways.
I know, me too. I love it. And you live in my hometown of San Fran, right? You're still in San Francisco, right?
Actually, I just moved. Yeah, I'm in Davis, which is outside of.
Oh, still in the Bay Area-ish.
Totally. Yeah.
But I love that you're up there. So anyways, I adore you. Thank you for being here. And everybody tuning in today, thank you so much for joining me in today's episode. As you guys know, I always strive with every single guest that I have on, or if it's a solo episode with just me, is really to empower each and every one of you guys to pause in this particular life of ours, because with the hustle and bustle and with being on the hamster wheel all the time, we are missing out on the good stuff. And with what Leah talked about today, the power in the pause is all where your potential lives. It is where you get to grow and become the best version of yourself. Leah, thank you again for being here today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Sending you all so much love, light, and joy as always. Mwah. Bye, everybody.